I stood behind the counter of Alexandria Books, carefully restoring the spine of a first edition Hemingway. The morning light filtered through the dusty windows, casting a warm glow on the towering shelves that my grandfather had built by hand 50 years ago. The familiar scent of aged paper and leather bindings filled the air, a smell that meant home to me, even if my family thought it meant failure. The bell above the door chimed. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. The sharp click of designer heels against hardwood floors announced my sister Vanessa's arrival before her voice did. "Oh good, you're actually open," she said, her tone dripping with the kind of practiced condescension that only came from years of looking down at others. "Mother was worried you might have finally given up on this." She glanced around, wrinkling her nose. Quaint little project. I carefully set down my tools and looked up. Vanessa stood in her perfectly tailored channel suit, diamond earrings catching the sunlight. Behind her, my brother Marcus leaned against a bookshelf, absently checking his Rolex. "The shareholders' meeting starts in an hour," Marcus said, not bothering to hide his impatience. "Father sent us to collect you. Though why he bothers including you in these things anymore is beyond me." I felt my jaw tighten. Hamilton Publishing, our family's company, had been the largest publishing house on the East Coast for 3 generations. My grandfather had built it from nothing, starting with this very bookstore. But somewhere along the way, the company had lost its soul, becoming more concerned with profit margins than the written word. "I'll pass," I said, returning to my work. "Some of us actually have to earn a living." Vanessa laughed, the sound echoing off the shelves. "Earn a living? Sophie, darling, you barely make enough to keep the lights on in this dusty old place." Meanwhile, the company's digital division alone brought in $400 million last quarter. I didn't respond. She wasn't wrong about the numbers. Alexandria Books barely broke even most months. But every time I thought about selling it, I remembered my grandfather's words. "Sophie, this store isn't just about selling books. It's about preserving stories, protecting the magic that lives between pages." "Father's patience isn't endless," Marcus added, straightening his tie. "The company's expanding into NFTs and digital rights management. The board wants to liquidate all physical assets, including this property." My head snapped up. This store isn't a company asset. Grandpa left it to me in his will. "Yes, his one great mistake," Vanessa sighed. "Leaving the company's birthplace to the only Hamilton who doesn't understand business. The building alone is worth millions in real estate value." I stood up, anger finally breaking through my practiced calm. "Get out." "Excuse me." Vanessa's perfectly shaped eyebrows shot up. I said, "Get out. Both of you. Go to your meeting, make your millions, but leave my store alone." Marcus pushed off from the shelf, shaking his head. "Still the same stubborn Sophie. You know, this is why Father passed you over for CEO. No business sense, just foolish sentimentality." They left, the bell chiming mockingly behind them. Through the window, I watched them climb into Marcus's Ferrari, their laughter carrying through the glass. I waited until they'd driven away before letting my shoulders slump. The truth was, the store was struggling. Amazon and online retailers had changed everything. Most days, I saw more dust than customers. But this place held secrets my siblings couldn't understand. I locked the front door, flipping the sign to closed, and headed to the back room. This was my sanctuary, where my grandfather had spent his final years cataloging his personal collection. Books filled every available space, from floor to ceiling, some so old their titles had faded into illegibility. My fingers traced along the spines until I reached the section I'd been avoiding for months. Grandpa's last project. The books he'd been examining before his stroke, still sitting exactly where he'd left them. Something about Marcus's threat felt different this time. Maybe it was time to finally go through these last few volumes, to finish what Grandpa had started. I pulled out the first book, a leather-bound tome with no title on its spine. As I opened it, a yellowed envelope slipped from between its pages, floating to the floor like an autumn leaf. My heart stopped when I saw the handwriting on the front. For Sophie, when the time is right. Love, Grandpa. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. The envelope contained more than just a letter. Several aged photographs slid out, along with what appeared to be a handwritten manuscript. My heart raced as I began reading my grandfather's familiar scrawl. My dearest Sophie, if you're reading this, it means they're finally trying to take the store from you. I knew this day would come. Your father and siblings never understood what we protected here. They think Alexandria Books is just a dusty old shop, a relic of the past. They couldn't be more wrong. What I'm about to tell you must remain secret until the right moment. I sank into Grandpa's old leather chair, documents spread across the reading desk. The more I read, the more my hands trembled. The manuscript wasn't just any old book. It was the original handwritten draft of The Lost Kingdom, the most mysterious work in publishing history. Written in 1923 by reclusive author Edmund Blake, the book had achieved near-mythical status. Only 100 copies were ever printed, and each one had vanished within a year of publication. Collectors worldwide had spent decades searching for even a single page. The story itself was said to contain coded messages leading to an immense fortune, but most people dismissed it as an urban legend. Yet here it was, the original manuscript in my grandfather's collection, along with Blake's personal notes and correspondence. My grandfather's letter explained everything. I found it in 1972, hidden in a false bottom of a trunk at an estate sale. Blake had no heirs, no family. He left clues scattered across his work, leading to something that could change everything. I've spent years trying to decode it, Sophie. The answer is in these pages, but I ran out of time. You're the only one who can finish what I started. You understand books the way I do, not as commodities, but as treasures. Your father and siblings would sell this to the highest bidder without a second thought. But you'll understand what to do with it. A knock at the store's front door jolted me from my reading. Through the window, I saw Oliver Chen, my best friend since college and now a rare book authenticator at Christie's. I quickly gathered the papers and locked them in Grandpa's safe before letting him in. Your sister called, he said, looking concerned. Said you had some kind of breakdown at the store. Are you okay? I laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. Did she call you as my friend or as a potential buyer for the building? Oliver had the grace to look embarrassed. Both, actually. Hamilton Publishing is serious this time, Sophie. They're preparing a hostile takeover of the property. They can't. The deed is in my name. They're claiming the store was never properly transferred out of company holdings. Your father has paperwork showing it's still a Hamilton Publishing asset. My blood ran cold. Forged documents. Would you put it past them? I glanced toward the back room where Grandpa's safe held what might be the most valuable literary discovery of the century. How long do I have? The court filing is set for Monday. 4 days. 4 days to decode a manuscript that my grandfather had spent decades studying. 4 days to uncover a secret that had remained hidden for almost a century. 4 days to save not just the bookstore, but perhaps my grandfather's legacy. I need your help, I said, leading Oliver to the back room. But first, you have to promise me something. What I'm about to show you stays between us. Not a word to anyone, especially not my family. Sophie, you're scaring me. I opened the safe, pulling out the manuscript. Oliver's eyes widened as he realized what he was looking at. Is that the original manuscript of The Lost Kingdom, the one that everyone thought was destroyed? Oliver sank into a chair, his professional composure cracking. Do you have any idea what this is worth? The auction value alone. It's not for sale. I cut him off. It's the key to something bigger. Grandpa left notes, clues. We need to figure out what Blake was hiding. For the next several hours, we pored over the manuscript and my grandfather's research. Blake's story on the surface was simple, a tale of a hidden civilization and its vast treasures. But certain words were written with slightly different spacing. Some letters had unusual flourishes, and scattered throughout were seemingly random numbers. It's a cipher, Oliver finally said, excitement creeping into his voice. Look at these sequences. They're not random. They're coordinates. I pulled up Google Maps on my phone while Oliver read out the numbers. The location that appeared made my heart skip. The Manhattan headquarters of Hamilton Publishing. The building wasn't built until 1950, I said, frowning. Blake died in 1925. How could he have known? Because, Oliver said slowly, Hamilton Publishing wasn't the first owner of that land. According to these notes, it used to be. A loud crash from the front of the store interrupted him. We froze, hearing footsteps and voices. Start boxing up everything, my sister's voice commanded. Father wants this place cleared out by morning. They were here, and they were early. I quickly shoved the manuscript and notes back into the safe, but not before taking a photo of the crucial pages with my phone. Oliver and I slipped out the back door just as Vanessa's voice got closer. Standing in the alley behind my store, watching through the window as a team of workers began dismantling my grandfather's shelves, I made a decision. I wouldn't let them destroy everything he had built. Not when I was so close to understanding the truth. Where are we going? Oliver asked as I hailed a cab. Hamilton Publishing. I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. It's time to find out what Edmund Blake hid in my family's building. The taxi pulled away from the curb, and I watched my bookstore disappear from view. By tomorrow, it would be emptied, stripped bare by my own family. But if Blake's manuscript was right, what waited at Hamilton Publishing would change everything. I just had to solve the puzzle before my family discovered what I'd found. The Manhattan headquarters of Hamilton Publishing loomed above us in the fading evening light, its gleaming glass facade a stark contrast to my cozy bookstore. The irony wasn't lost on me. The building that symbolized my family's betrayal might also hold the key to saving everything my grandfather had built. Your ID badge still work? Oliver whispered as we approached the lobby. I pulled out the access card I'd never returned after being pushed out of the company. Only one way to find out. The security guard barely glanced up as we walked past, my outdated badge still granting access after all these years. The evening cleaning crew paid us no attention as we made our way to the executive floor, home to the company's historical records and my father's private office. According to Blake's manuscript and my grandfather's notes, the secret lay somewhere in the building's original foundation. The coordinates pointed to a specific spot, now buried beneath decades of renovations. The old blueprints should be in the archive room, I said, leading Oliver down a quiet hallway. If we can cross-reference them with Blake's numbers. Sophie. I froze. My father's voice echoed from his office doorway. He stood there in his perfectly tailored suit, surprise quickly turning to cold anger on his face. "I thought I might find you here," he said, stepping into the hallway. "Though I admit, I expected you to wait until we'd finished clearing out that dustbin you call a store." "You had no right," I said, my voice shaking. "Those books, that building, they belong to me." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing belongs to you, Sophie. Everything you have exists because of this company. Your grandfather understood that in the end. Why do you think he left controlling interest to me?" "Because you threatened him," I shot back. "I found his letter, Dad. I know what you did." Something flickered across his face. Fear, maybe. But it was gone in an instant. "I don't know what you think you found, but Edmund Blake's original manuscript, I cut him off. The real reason you wanted the store so badly. You knew it was there, didn't you? That's why you've been trying to force me out." My father's face went pale. Behind me, Oliver shifted nervously. "Sophie," my father said, his voice dangerous now, "you need to be very careful about what you do next. That manuscript is company property. If you've removed it from the premises, it was never company property." I replied, "Blake didn't leave it to Hamilton Publishing. He left it to the owner of Alexandria Books, which was Grandpa, and is now me." "Where is it?" He stepped closer, all pretense of civility gone. "Safe, along with proof of how you forged documents to steal the store, how you threatened Grandpa when he wouldn't sell, and—" I pulled out my phone, showing him the photos I'd taken of Blake's coded pages. The real reason this building exists where it does. Something changed in my father's expression. For the first time in my life, I saw him look afraid. "You haven't decoded it," he said, but his voice wavered. "Haven't I?" I smiled, channeling some of my sister's practiced confidence. "The coordinates, the old property records, the original foundation plans, it all points to one thing. Blake's lost fortune isn't just a legend, and it's buried right under this building." "That's impossible," he whispered. "We surveyed every inch during construction." "No," I corrected him. "You surveyed what you could see, but Blake's codes point to something deeper. Something hidden in the bedrock itself. Something worth far more than this entire company." My father's hand twitched toward his phone. "Security will be here in 2 minutes. Whatever you think you found is already in the hands of every major news outlet," I finished for him, "along with evidence of your corporate fraud. So here's what's going to happen." The next hour passed in a blur of lawyers, documents, and barely concealed threats. By midnight, I walked out of Hamilton Publishing with full ownership of Alexandria Books restored to my name, along with a controlling interest in the company's physical bookstore division. My father kept his position as CEO, but we both knew his power was broken. The board wouldn't look kindly on his actions once the full story came out. "I still can't believe it worked," Oliver said as we stood outside my store the next morning. The moving trucks were gone. Everything returned to its rightful place. But what about Blake's treasure? Was it really there under the building? I smiled, unlocking the store's front door. "Come on, there's something I need to show you." In the back room, I opened my grandfather's safe and pulled out Blake's manuscript one last time. But instead of coordinates or coded messages, I showed Oliver what my grandfather had highlighted on the very last page. The greatest fortune a man can possess isn't gold or jewels, but the power of stories themselves. I leave this manuscript not as a map to hidden wealth, but as proof that words hold more value than any treasure. So there was never anything buried under Hamilton Publishing? Oliver asked, understanding dawning on his face. Just an elaborate bluff, I confirmed. One my father was too afraid to call, because he believed wealth had to mean money. He never understood what Grandpa tried to teach us, that real value isn't always about dollars and cents. I looked around at my store, at the shelves my grandfather built, at the books he'd loved, at the legacy he trusted me to protect. Besides, I added with a smile, who says we need buried treasure? This place, these books, they're worth more than anything my family could offer. The morning light streamed through the windows, dust motes dancing in the air like tiny stars. The store's bell chimed as our first customer of the day walked in. "Welcome to Alexandria Books," I called out, feeling truly at home for the first time in years. Oliver squeezed my shoulder before heading out. "Your grandfather would be proud," he said softly. I thought of my father in his glass tower, of my siblings in their luxury cars, of all their money and power and empty achievements. Then I looked at my little bookstore, filled with stories and memories and magic. They had never understood what real wealth looked like, but I did, and that was worth more than all their millions combined. Standing behind my counter, breathing in the familiar scent of aged paper and leather, I smiled. Sometimes the greatest victories don't come from finding hidden treasures or making millions. Sometimes they come from protecting what matters most, from standing your ground when the world tells you to give up, from knowing, deep in your heart, that some things are worth more than money could ever buy.